hold on. I just need to read out her bio so that you know all the work that she's doing. You know who you're working with. You know who is going to be, sharing this amazing speech and going to assist you in your journey. So Palesa Mofokeng is the co-founder of Edtech Bridges, a registered nonprofit company concerned with ICT teacher training. She is studying towards her master's in educational technology at Wits University in South Africa and is currently lecturing at the IIE Rosebank College's School of Education. Palesa is passionate about education and leadership. Her leadership career can be traced back from her schooling and varsity years, and the pinnacle of her student activism and leadership journey was when she was elected to serve in the Wits SRC as the SRC Academic Officer. Right, now Girleada embodies everything I believe in as far as leadership, women empowerment and development is concerned. It is truly an honor to be part of the discussion concerned, and these are words from Palesa herself. I don't know if you were able to hear me. I think I faced some network glitches there. But I'm going to hand over to Palesa Mofokeng, very passionate about education, very passionate about the empowerment of women, very passionate about what we stand for as Girleada today. Palesa, are you there?
Hi, Program Director. Yes, I am here. How are you?
I am well. How are you? I hope you are well prepared and are excited about addressing our Girleaders today.
Preparation, I don't know about that because you'll never know what happens. Start speaking, I'm very much excited to be part of this very important discussion and conversation, and just to have a conversation with the young leaders out there, and just helping them in terms of giving a perspective as far as the will to lead is concerned. So thank you so much for having me.
Fantastic. I think you can start.
All right. Greetings to the Girleaders out there. As the program director has already stated, my name is Palesa Mofokeng. So I'm very excited to be part of this. And yes, I can be all of that, and I would have done all of those things that she has mentioned. But there was a time in my life where I also needed somebody to be speaking to me, and within me being in your own position right now, to speak to me about, how do I then navigate the space as far as leadership is concerned, and how do I then, prepare myself and just prepare myself in terms of being willing to lead. So I think to start this discussion, really, I did ask our program director to just, ensure that the audience, the people that I'm talking to now, probably have something to write on, a paper, a pen, or probably you would have opened your Word document somewhere, because what I want this to be is to be very interactive and to be a conversation more than anything. So I hope that our Girleaders, in your own spaces, you do have a pen and a paper, so that as you go through this conversation, at least you're also able to then, contribute to the discussion at hand. So I'm very looking forward to us talking and asking questions in the interim, and then just, literally contributing to the discussion as we move ahead. So I hope that we do have our pens and ball pens and pages ready. So by show of hands, you all have that. So I know that going forward, everybody's ready. Is that we all have those equipments at our disposal? Show of hands, just you can just press that hand icon there, so I see that you're all there. And then program director, please help me to also identify if that is the case as well.
Definitely.
Let me
just check. So I'm seeing a lot of hands. I am seeing a lot of hands, which means people are prepared. Fantastic.
Yeah. Lovely stuff. So yes, in this discussion, literally, like I said, it is a conversation. And as a point of departure, it's very important that we try and have an understanding of the world in terms of leadership. So in my very simplified way of defining will has got to do with readiness to do something, right? In terms, and also it speaks to the quality and the state or ability to be prepared to do something. So as a leader, it is a matter of you being ready to doing something, and your will then comes to then prepare you to making decisions that are going to help in terms of doing any activity as far as leadership is concerned. So with that being said, you need to be prepared to do something. Secondly, before preparation comes decision making. As a leader, you need to decide on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, to say, you know what, I am choosing to lead regardless of the circumstances. So yes, you are willing and you're ready to do something, but with you being ready comes you preparing, and with preparation comes then what we call decision making. So as a leader, in you wanting to lead, you must always be on that constant journey to wanting to decide or to deciding to do something on a daily basis. Then you work towards your way towards preparing for that act, right? And then how do you prepare might be the question. So in terms of preparing, in as far as your willingness to lead has got to do with you, going through the mentorship process. I don't want to bring in like your very bombastic terms and everything else. I want to make this very practical and just speak very simply, understand the context and the audience that I'm speaking to. So do feel free to take the notes, because I think you might be able to, use them in the future, in your future intervals, whatever the case may be. So yes, before preparation comes decision, then you work your way towards preparing for the act of leadership. And how do you then prepare for the act of leadership is the question. My 2 cents in terms of how do we then prepare is, number one, as a leader, you should have a circle of mentorship around you or mentors around you. And these are the people that have gone through the road, that have literally followed the road, and they have the knowledge, the expertise to then help you in terms of how do you then navigate the space, in terms of you being willing to lead in the space. So being a leader has got to do with a heart to serve. You cannot lead if you don't have a heart to serve. You must have that servant heart, and then you are then willing to lead. The other part is leadership is a very lonely journey. So you must understand that in you being part of this leadership journey, it is going to be very lonely. And it's in you then having the mentors around you to then trying to help you to say, you know what, Palesa, you can do it. We can do ABC. How do we then tackle this issue? Those people, because they would have gone through the road, they will then be able to be in a better position to advise you further. And of course, with this advisors, then comes the issue of what it is just their own experiences. And with you then taking or drawing from their experiences comes with it a willingness to learn, and you must be teachable in the process. That's the other part. If you're going to have a mentor who's going to then assist you in your mentorship journey, you must be teachable. That's the other part that you are also living out in the leadership space, because we all think we know. Yes, you might be willing to lead, you might have the heart to lead, but are you teachable in the process? If I am to mentor you today and I see that Lerato is not teachable, we cannot continue with the journey because there is no willingness to learn. So remember, in your willingness to learn and in you then willingness to lead rather, and you having a mentor or the mentorship structure around you, you must be teachable. That's the other part. Be willing to learn from the mentors that you have, from the support structure that you would have created in that space. The other part in you now preparing for this leadership journey in terms of your readiness to lead then comes with literally being part of organizations such as Girleada, right? It is through this organizations where you equip yourself with the necessary applicable knowledge base and skill set, so that should you then be presented with an opportunity to lead, you then have the knowledge base to do that. So that's also part of you then equipping yourself as a leader. We cannot afford to have leaders that are not, equipped in terms of the knowledge base, in terms of the skill set, because it is true that leaders are born, but at the same time, leaders are made. Born because it must be within you, made by or through the experiences that you go through. I mean, with me, I can also relate this very same quote to say, I was born to lead, and I'm very much in the space that I'm leading in. I can also say that the spaces, the experiences, they made me the leader that I am today. So you must also understand that being born, it has got to do with what you're called to do in a sense. So the fact that you are here and the fact that you are attending this program has got to do with you, knowing that, what, I want to be somebody in life and I want to lead within the space that I find myself in. I want to take up space as a woman and also understand how do I then navigate this space, and hence you're part of this program. So you must understand that in your willingness to lead, it is a constant journey to learning going forward, right? And the other part is equipping oneself with, I just say that in terms of the knowledge base and the skill set, so that the platforms rather that you find yourself in, the places that you get to influence, render you qualified and worthy of being in that particular space. That's the other part. Remember, being female and being a female leader is not really much a narrative that has always been celebrated. So once you equip yourself with the necessary knowledge skills and, knowledge skills rather, and the skill set, knowledge base and skill set that is, you literally render yourself qualified and worthy to being in that particular space. And remember, once you're in a particular space, because of your willingness to lead, you must understand that people buy into the leader before their vision. So you might have this great and grand vision to say, I want to change the world through ICT teacher training, for example. But at the same time, people buy into you as a leader to say, okay, how credible are you? What do you stand for as a person before the vision that comes in? So as you understand and as you navigate the space in terms of your willingness to lead and your ability to lead in the space, you must understand that people buy into the leader before the vision. So what that means is, in your own self, within your own self, you must be upright. Whatever that you stand for, you must be firm in it. Whatever that you believe in, you must be very firm in it. So that's the other part in terms of you trying to navigate this space. There will be obstacles, there will be red tapes, there will be, what do you call it? That's what I'm looking for. Obstacles, challenges, and opposition, yes. So you must be willing to then understand, okay, fine, in this very same space, how do I then navigate it? And obviously, with that same space, there will come what you call an imposter syndrome, not feeling good enough, just say, man, I think there's somebody who's more qualified, somebody who's more, articulate than me. So how do we then deal with those issues? I can tell you now that even today, this is one thing that I still, work around in terms of, I don't feel that I'm good enough for this part, it happens. It does happen to all of us. So that is when you need to understand that courage is very important in this space. Like I said, finding the mentors, finding the people that have gone through the route, and just equipping yourself with the knowledge will then assist you in terms of navigating the space, the leadership space that you want to then impact in that part. We can also refer to women like African leaders in terms of their courage, in terms of their leadership role in this space. I don't know if you all know of Ellen Joseph Sirleaf, like she's the first female president in Africa. And the other part is, why do I mention her is, in the leadership space that we find ourselves in, we must also be very aware, or rather mind our privilege as women. There is this common narrative today to say we cannot be celebrating anything that is first. For me, I highly, highly disagree with that part, because given the history, given the background of women in this space, we then need to always celebrate the first, and to say, if she is the first, then that automatically, or we'd like to believe that, there is a room for those that look like her as well. So it must be very much willing to then celebrate the first, as you are willing to celebrate, any other thing that comes with being in the leadership space. So it's very important that as people in the space, as women in the space, we mind our privilege. For that, if I'm the first female anything in the space, how do I then, direct the narrative of those who look like me? How do I advocate for their struggles? How do I advocate and literally position them in terms of ensuring that I bring in policies, I bring in programs that are going to then equip them in the space? Your willingness to lead must also, you must also embrace the challenges that come with you being in the space. One thing that I always say in terms of the people that I interact with is, it's very important to understand that when you're in a space, it does not come from the fact that, you are smarter than anybody else, but you must understand that somebody had to go through the route before you. And having done that, how are you then, ensuring that the ones that are coming after you are then going to do, are not going to benefit from whatever that you've done. So it's very important that as you think about the willingness to lead in the space, you must also understand that there are obstacles, that challenges. The other part that I want to highlight in terms of this very discussion is, if the space that you find yourself in does not allow you or even enable you to lead, it might be a problem. That's when we talk about the socioeconomic issues, the systems in place that are then going to hinder you from being able to leading the space that you find yourself in. I can tell you now that I'm in my SRC term or any other leadership position that I had, there were a lot of red tapes, right? And there were a lot of systematic barriers to me wanting to do whatever I wanted to do, because I understood the call to lead in that space, to say, I'm not here to serve any agenda, my agenda, but I must understand that me being the female, Black female in the space, how am I then advocating, voicing out the grievances, you know, the challenges of those that look like me. So obviously you must also be aware of those perspectives and how do we then navigate this space, because the spaces that you find yourself in will never favor you anytime. So a leadership moment is further defined by a crisis. So what that means is, because when it's sunny and there's no problem, it's very easy to lead, right? It's very, very easy to lead. But a leader is defined by a leadership moment. And that's what a lot of leaders and speakers have always alluded to, that fact, to say a leader is defined by a leadership moment. It's very easy to lead when there is no crisis, but how do you then, in your willingness to lead, how do you then navigate a situation with a crisis? How do you always then, inspire confidence? How do you provide directive in the midst of that crisis? So in your willingness to lead, you must also understand that emotionally you must be intact. Psychologically, you must be intact. You must always inspire confidence as a leader. You must always try and ensure that whatever direction that you give to the team, it is always from a sober and direct mind. So the other part is, in terms of you leading, is there will be a crisis that you're going to be faced with. How are you then going to deal with it? And I hope that we do have questions in terms of specifics in terms of my journey within the leadership journey, and in me navigating the space as far as my willingness to lead is concerned, right? So in your willingness to lead, you must be prepared and be willing to stand through the rain and the hardships. Be willing and be prepared to stand through the conflicts, the disagreements, because in any leadership space, because of different personalities, there are a lot of disagreements, right? Now, each leader, like I said, it is defined by a leadership moment. So you must also be willing to lead in a time of crisis. This is not a time to now back down or even cry, right? How do we then, dust yourself and ensure that, yes, I did make a decision to lead? How do I ensure that even in my decision to lead, I am able to then provide leadership, inspire confidence, and just provide directive in that stance? All right, now that I did speak about, your ability to lead, your willingness to stand through anything, I spoke about the power of just being able to stand through conflicts, right? Now, in a leadership space, I want to show you something in this regard. Given that we all have our papers and pens or Word documents ready, I want us to type in whatever that comes to mind when you think about the word leadership. Our program director, this is when I'm going to need you to work with me here, because I want our people to just, participate. I'm trying to get through something with this conflict part, and how do we then, navigate conflict in as far as the leadership journey or context is concerned. So the word is leadership. What's going to happen is, in your own setting, wherever you sit, you can even type in the chat box if that is possible for us to do, to say what comes to mind when you think of the word leadership. Anybody who can unmute themselves and just tell us what comes to mind when you think about the word leadership. So please just tell us your name and then we take it from there.
Danyama, her hand is up.
Yes. She can talk.
Yes, Danyama's hand is up.
Banyana, you can talk. Okay, Nuka is saying responsibilities. Okay, I can note that one down. Growth, Vuelwa.
All right.
Okay, delegation. Okay, when it comes to the word leadership, influence, I like that. So the writing, I think people are just comfortable with the typing part of it. Guidance, right? Determination, service, and integrity. All right. So that's the first word that comes to mind. That's one of the key points that comes to mind in terms of your thinking of leadership, right? Now, the second word is open-minded. I see that, Kuma. Thank you so much for that. There is determination, there's guidance, there's integrity, there's influence when you think about the word leadership, right? Inspiration, inspiration, motivation. There's whole advocate, authenticity. I see Linda there. Perfect. Now, the second word is, so you tell me what comes to mind, right? Tell me what comes when you think about the word yourself, like myself now, like in terms of, this, let me see. Dineo. So in terms, let me just make an example now. I'm using the word myself to say, Dineo, when you think about yourself, what comes to mind? So when you think about yourself, what comes to mind? Can you all type in terms of myself? This is what I think when I think about myself. What comes to mind? To identity. Okay, I see that part. Yes. Anything else? You're a hard worker. Okay, we see you, hard worker. Okay. Genuine person. I like that. Okay. You're confident. Determined. Perfect. Authentic. Organized. Lovely. Now, the last word is in terms of our leadership journey and us trying to navigate the space is what comes to mind when you think about the word process. Motivated. Okay, Kum, I see that. The last word, that's the last word for us so that we can just finish the session. The last word is process. What comes to mind when you think about the word process? Long. All right. Patience. Time management. Okay. The drive. Okay. Journey. Lovely. Perfect. Challenges with the processes, or with the process rather comes challenge. All right, challenge. Work. Right, now, so here's the point that I wanted to drive in terms of this exercise. I spoke about red tapes, I spoke about obstacles, I spoke about challenges, right? And conflict in your willingness to lead. In terms of the space that you find yourself in, because of different personalities, you will then, reach conflicts with people that you are interacting with the people that you are leading. Now, in your perspective or with your perception of the word leadership, some of you mentioned respect, some of you mentioned responsibility, growth, delegation, influence, guidance. And with the word self, some of you see yourselves as, hardworking, genuine, confident people, authentic, you're organized and whatnot, right? And in terms of the word process, what came to mind in terms of that word is patience, something that is very long, it's a journey, challenge, work, and all of that. Now, with all these answers and these responses, embedded in those responses are what we call perspectives, right? And the fact that I see or I define or what comes to mind in terms of leadership is responsibility, and to the next person is growth, it does not make those people's perspective wrong. It's just a matter of what perspective. I'm seeing this word from a different perspective. So that is when conflicts come in the space, where we see things from different perspective. And because now you are not seeing eye to eye with certain things, you're thinking that the other one is wrong, the other one is right. So in terms of you now navigating the space, in terms of your willingness to lead, you must understand the power of perspective. Are you all clear with that part? Conflicts come as a result of what? Different perspective. And with different perspective comes what? Different backgrounds and lived experiences. So just because I'm seeing the word leadership as being responsible does not mean that if Lungelo sees it as guidance, it's wrong. It's just a matter of perspective. Now, within a leadership space, and if you're a leader within that space, you need to find what we call a common ground. How do we then navigate the space in terms of finding a common ground so that the vision that we are trying to achieve is achieved in terms of that common ground and that common goal with us together leading? All right. The power of perspective is very important. So I'd like to leave it there. And if there are any questions in terms of our journey and our willingness to lead, what comes to mind is that, it's very important that we always remember that we are beings in the process of becoming. And in our becoming, the joy was, and will forever be on the journey. So thank you so much for your time. I think I'll just take a few rounds of questions if there's any. and then we can just, close the session. Program director, this is when I need you to just, help me in terms of identifying the few questions that are on the ground for me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that amazing speech, Palesa. I think one thing that really, really stood out to me, and I think that I'm going to incorporate as well, is the simple fact that people buy into the person before the vision. So you need to ensure that you lead yourself well before you expect to lead others as well. When you fail to lead yourself, you're failing to also going to lead others because you don't lead yourself well. I think that is absolutely fantastic. So if we have any questions for Palesa in terms of her leadership journey, then feel free to ask questions. If maybe you have questions from the bio that I read out, feel free to do so. I think maybe I could start with a question that people might be interested in knowing. In terms of starting your own organization, what were some of the challenges that you faced, and what actually motivated you to start something like that?
Hey, right, motivation and challenges. All right, so let me just talk about motivation at first, right? So with me, I'm a teacher, right? So I did my undergrad BEd honors and then my master's in educational technology. So in my 3rd and 4th year of study, I took a very decisive, intentional decision to say, I want to go and teach. I do my practicals in a real school. So lucky enough, there was a program that was run through the Wits School of Education. You apply for it, you motivate, blah, 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 the process. So lucky enough, I got selected for 2 years, and I got to do my practicals in a real school in Mpumalanga, right? So it was through this experience that I saw how it is difficult for teachers to literally navigate this space with limited resources, limited facilities, lack of training, proper training, sufficient training to call it, just to mention that part. So having seen this context and having seen and having lived within this reality, I was like, okay, maybe your girl can come up with something in terms of, how do you then, as a social entrepreneur, how do you then come up with a solution that is going to help teachers, particularly in the rural areas, to then, use any resource that they have to just navigate this space, right? So with me, I can remember one lesson that I had to do, and I had to do everything from the word scratch, like in terms of finding the resources, the materials, and everything else. So you can imagine that, the passion was there, but I don't have the means. I spoke about the space that we find ourselves in, not enabling us to do what we want to do. So that's when I saw that I can have this passion, this willingness to teach, but is the space enabling me to do that? I want to bring in transformative pedagogies in terms of my teaching practices, but is my space allowing me to do that? And this is the reality for teachers, for most teachers rather, in the rural setup. And that was the motivation, to try to enable the teachers in that regard, to say, yes, this is a context that you find yourself in. These are the material conditions. These are the challenges that you are facing. How do we then, navigate this space, for lack of a better term? So yeah, that was my motivation to say, I've lived this life, I've seen it. So what do I then do as a person who's very much interested in change? What do I then do, given the privilege that I have? The other part is me being within an institution such as Wits comes with a lot of privilege. Let's just be honest with that, comes with a lot of privileges. So what do I then do in terms of the privilege that I have, the knowledge base that I have, the connections that I may have, to ensure that I use that circle of connections and the social network that I have to then get the resources and then translate them back to the people that may not already have them. So that was the reason behind it, and hence EdTech Bridges, the vision came in that regard. So the challenges, obviously, that come with studying something from scratch. Yes, there is this narrative that if it's Black owned, if it's Black female owned, there's a lot of buy-in. But at the same time, you need to be aware that if it's Black owned and anything else, how do we then, use what we have to ensure that you get the resources? So the challenges rather was that you have to you get to boardrooms and you pitch your idea, and they still feel like, there's something missing, go and work on this, or we don't feel that the idea is ready, whatever the case is. But lucky enough for us is when we launched last in October, we're very strategic in terms of the people that we invited to the launch, right? We invited people from the private sector. We ensured that the department people are there, you know. So in terms of us trying to literally ensure that we mitigate the challenges, we then had to ensure that the people that we invite are the people that are going to buy into the vision. And even how we then planned the whole launch, then had to speak about informing the people about the importance of this program. So that was that. And then afterwards, post the launch, we then had to speak to the people to say, now that we have problematized this whole issue of ICT teacher training and development, how do you then, as an organization, as FNBS, for example, as the Department of Basic Education, how do we then, come on board to assisting this vision going forward? So we do understand that there were those challenges in terms of people buying into the vision, but in terms of our launch, we then had to ensure that we are strategic in the people that we invited, and they're very much willing to buy into that vision. So I think at the same time as leaders and people that are willing to bring about change and just ensure that we leave the space that we find them better than they were, it's very important that we are strategic in how we then present the idea, how we present it, and also ensure that the people that are coming to that idea, they can buy into it. So yes, I did answer your question on motivation to say it was based on an experience that I had. And the challenges, how do we then mitigate those challenges, was just to ensure that when we launch, we not just launch for the sake of reaching, but we launch to ensure that the people are going to be in attendance. It was hybrid, so meaning that there were very few people in attendance, again, COVID protocols, and then we had people like streaming from the online. Is there anybody speaking? All right, so that was basically in terms of how we then navigated the challenges that may come with that. So yes, I think what we're doing now, what we're trying to work on now is ensure that we tighten those relations going forward. So that has been the mission so far in terms of us ensuring that, we mitigate the challenges and ensure that, we work through our way through.
You work through them. Fantastic. And then we're going to just take one more question from our participant. I think it's Rutendo Kahari.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Palesa, for sharing some leadership nuggets with us. So I wanted to find out, as a woman in leadership, what sort of benefits have you had by virtue of being a woman?
I know Misula, but the benefits in terms of me being a woman. Okay, benefits. So, let me see. I'll have to think about the benefits literally in totality. Being in this space and being a woman, and the fact that there is that, soft spot that is starting to grow for women in the space, there is a willingness to listen to women, all of a sudden. So I think in terms of being a woman in the space and the narratives that have been put forward in terms of women empowerment, Black women empowerment, has always been the case. And now we must give females a voice. So the benefits that comes with that is when you come with an organization that is like an all Black female-led or owned company, there is that willingness to listen. So I think for me, is the fact that there is that willingness to listen to the Black females in the space. And that on its own, it is an advantage, because if people are not willing to listen, you can't do anything. If you want to come up with solutions, there should be a room for conversation. And once we're able to create that room for conversation, we are then able to come up with strategies and, ways in which we can navigate the space and mitigate the challenges that come with it. So I think at the heart of me being in the space, me being a Black female leader in the space, has been the fact that my color now just speaks for me in terms of people being willing to listen, because most of these companies, most of these organizations, they're afraid of being labeled as racist and whatnot. So every single time it's an issue of saying, okay, but how do we then give this young female a voice, and how do we then try and assist them, because it is PR for them. Remember that part, right? So you must also understand that as you navigate a space, it is a give and take, right? I give you my blackness, you give me your money, whatever the case is, you know, in terms of that part. So the willingness to listen comes with a lot of good in terms of ensuring that the message that you're trying to push across, it gets across. So that's one of the things that I can think of from the top of my head.
Fantastic. I think that was such a wonderful question. It also gave me perspective, and I really just had to think about, okay, what benefits have I also experienced in terms of being a female leader? So obviously, I think there hasn't been a better time to be a female leader rather than now, you know, because I think we now have a voice, more women are educated, but beyond that,